So if we look at the General Comment 24, what does it do? The main aim really is to prevent secondary victimization of children at a pre-trial, trial, and post-trial level. It really focuses on synergies, on ensuring that there is a comprehensive and multi-sectoral coordination for the children in conflict with the law. And it basically, in a very summarized manner, lays down and puts forward those very fundamental elements. The first one is acknowledging the fact that the person in conflict with the law is a child, which means a person less than 18 years of age. Secondly, acknowledging that actually 4 fundamental principles are being into consideration while dealing with those children. The first one being the best interest of the child, the second one being no discrimination, the other one being the right to participation, and another one, of course, being the dignity of the child, the protection of the child. So when we do that, we need to ensure, first of all, that, and it's a very important component of the General Comment 24, there is an age determination protocol. We all know that birth registration of children is a major challenge, that a lot of children, unfortunately, are not benefiting the specific and special treatment that they ought to while they're facing justice. And to that end, ensuring that we follow an adequate process to not only register children, but prove that those children are actually children and will not be treated as adults during the justice system is very important. Secondly, it also focuses on ensuring that trial is actually not the first option. And therefore, there is a huge focus on what we call diversion, which means it focuses on alternative, non-judicial methods to basically help the child and focus on reformation and rehabilitation of the children who may end up in conflict with the law. Diversion has been proven to be far more effective than institutionalization and, of course, playing children in detention. And that is, and we also consider that detention should be seen as the last resort. In addition to this, there is also a set of various protective measures that children ought to benefit. First one being, first of all, probation officers or rehabilitation officers, trained judicial team, trained lawyers, trained prosecutors, ensuring that children are not mixed with adults at any stage of the justice mechanism. Having rehabilitation centers and not jails. Jails and children is simply not compatible. Ensuring that you have also specific courts and alternative measures such as video linkage to also not put the child into an adverse situation when they faced, co-accused, for example, or when they should be in, or where they may be intimidated. There is also a strong insistence on the need to recognize the various capacities of the child at the various stage of his or her own development, and taking that into consideration while investigating, questioning, and cross-examining. Thirdly, there is also, of course, a very huge clarification, which is the fact that no juvenile, no child in conflict with the law should be convicted to death. And also that it's not punishment, it's not punitive focused, but rather reformative focused type of action, which is being encouraged. And lastly, the need to, again, at the end of the trial, if really we have to see a trial for those children, ensuring that the multi-sectoral dynamics really focus on rehabilitating that child. And that, again, as we've seen with WHO or UNICEF during the pandemic, puts a lot of onus on the dimension of mental health and the social sector, rather than the Ministry of Interior to deal with such children. So that is overall an overview of the General Comment 24. CRC Asia will share with you the link to that document. I strongly encourage you to read it. And of course, the General Comment at the end of the day encourages all state parties to basically transcript and translate those fundamental principles and those specific arrangements in their own domestic legislation. So if I take the example of Pakistan, and yes, I'm so sorry, a very important element as well of the General Comment 24, the minimum age for criminal responsibility. There is an issue with children of mens rea. We know that very often children lack the necessary maturity. They don't have it to understand the real consequences and dimension of their act. And subsequently, the General Comment 24 recommends 14 years of age as the minimum, let's be very clear, it's not a maximum ceiling, as a minimum age for criminal responsibility. And it also discourages the kind of very vague parenthesis where you give, 14 maybe as a minimum age, but then look at the maturity of the child to assess whether the child is criminal or not. They rather call, the General Comment rather call for a clear threshold. And again, 14 years is the minimum. The General Comment encourages to go beyond that in terms of asserting the minimum age for criminal responsibility. So, as I was mentioning, I am supposed to take a few minutes to explain to you how Pakistan built upon this General Comment 24. So actually, as I said, the General Comment 24 took into consideration recommendations from groups and civil society and legal experts and child protection experts and children themselves, actually, to update General Comment 10. So before that, in May 2018, Pakistan enacted the Juvenile Justice System Act, which I would say pretty much takes into consideration all the principles of the General Comment 24, with actually one exception, one being this minimum criminal age. It's increased to 10 years of age, and then there is a kind of parenthesis where the judge will assess what is according to him or her, the responsibility and the level of maturity of that child. That is the norm which needs to be reviewed in alignment with General Comment 24. The rest of the law is actually very much aligned with this General Comment. Based on that, and following a public outcry of different examples of how children were not appropriately treated in the child justice system, the judiciary, the higher judiciary, decided to do something about it. And in December 2017, the first pilot child court was established in Pakistan. It was a specific child court to actually try the cases of the children in conflict with the law. What came out is that once trained with a specific setup, with specific equipment such as video linkage, waiting room, colorful environment with toys, not an adverse environment, those courts were actually giving much more child-sensitive decisions, and were really trying to ensure that children would actually avoid detention. Again, I repeat, ideally, those children, the exercise of child justice is to ensure that children do not end up at trial in the first place and rather avail diversion. But this is what was the case, the first assessment. What we therefore did is that the judiciary asked us to present the model. We did so. And so we upscaled on that model. And by now, we now have 13 pilot child courts in Pakistan who are actually, first of all, trying to refer children to diversion as much as possible. To date, since May 2018, we have identified 70 cases of children being sent to diversion. These are still baby steps, it's still nascent efforts. And this diversion is being organized and overseen by juvenile justice committees, which consist of magistrates, of lawyers and prosecutors, and probation officers. And we also have seen a large capacity building program. So we are proud to say that since December 2017, actually 3,000 children so far have availed child and gender sensitive justice services, and the families and the children express their satisfaction. However, the question remains, as far as the children who end up being convicted, we still need to ensure that there is a reformative approach, and that's where observation home, the fact that children should not be in police custody, the fact that children should avail rehabilitation in a child-conducive environment has to be translated into a certain type of structures in Pakistan, which are called observation home and rehabilitation center. Currently, a province in the northwest part of Pakistan called Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is working with civil society, social welfare department to actually set up those pilot observation home and those rehabilitation center. This will be pilot initiatives, and based on those models, we hope to be able to identify the good practices as well as the improving areas. But I would like to quote what was said during a previous seminar of CRC Asia. The best child justice system is a system where the child doesn't face a trial, doesn't go to court in the first place. So our focus has to be really on ensuring first that children who end up in conflict with the law benefit diversion, benefit rehabilitative and reformative approach, are given a second chance at the right time. And if not so, that the trial system and the post-trial system really focuses on reforming those children, protecting them, giving them dignity, and make them avail a regime which really serves their best interest. Just one last point. I think some of you have actually asked that before. How are you going to make sure that there is this, agreement and social and political buy-in for such a reform? We have basically used child participatory approach to do that. We launched a campaign which was called Activism for Child Justice. We partnered with state actors such as the Federal Ministry of Law and Justice, the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and even the Federal Ministry of Human Rights. And we've launched some web series, some video song. We've also done some, concert and campaigns, and we ensure that the children themselves talk to the decision makers at state level. It did make a difference, and I'm very happy to report that the mini web series that we produced in collaboration with the Pakistani Federal Ministry of Law and Justice, as well as the capacity building program, the data monitoring and collection and monitoring, which is called applied research with the higher judiciary, has now been identified by the World Organization Against Torture as 3 examples of best practices in the world. Thank you so much.